Chapter 1. The Handsome Man. Boom! A loud explosion echoed from the premium skyward room of the Crimson Pavilion, but it was quickly drowned out by the noise outside. Amidst the wreckage of the intricately carved bed, a woman in a red dress lay buried under layers of gauze, motionless. Beside her was an extraordinarily handsome man meditating with his eyes closed. However, the energy surrounding him was gradually weakening, creating an oddly bizarre scene. Ugh! Luna felt as though she was being scorched by a sea of flames and blades, both burning and agonizing, the sensation nearly driving her mad. Damn it! Luna cursed under her breath. Though her voice was faint, it shattered the eerie silence of the moment. She struggled to pry open her leaden eyelids, and within her black and white eyes, a fierce, bloodthirsty glint shone. Damn it, if she ever found out who hit her with their car, she would make them regret being alive. But just then, the veins on Luna's forehead throbbed. Could someone explain to her why, after waking up from a car accident, she was buried alive under a pile of fabric scraps and rotting wood? Who on earth did this to her? In her fury, Luna tried to fling away the annoying debris entangling her, only to find that her arms were almost entirely devoid of strength. Damn it, she was Luna, the infamous ghost doctor and special agent of the Bureau of Artifice. When had she ever been this weak? After a prolonged struggle, relying on sheer willpower, Luna finally crawled out from under the pile of scraps. But the moment she took in her surroundings, she froze in place. Before her was an ancient, traditional room. Where was this? Filled with questions, she dragged her utterly exhausted body out of the wreckage, but her balance faltered, and she toppled to one side. Frustrated and wondering when her body had become so feeble, she instinctively reached out to grab onto something. Rip! The sound of fabric tearing echoed, followed by a muffled groan. After a moment of shaking, the room fell silent once more, leaving Luna staring blankly at the thing in her hand. What is this? Warm and it's growing? Luna froze, looking down, and suddenly her face flushed crimson, unable to suppress her embarrassment. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Oh no! How was she supposed to know there was someone else in the room? And worse, she had grabbed. Luna dared not think further, feeling as though her lifelong reputation was about to be ruined. Her face grew even hotter than before. While apologizing profusely, Luna struggled to free herself from the victim, but the more she struggled, the harder it became to escape. Her body temperature seemed to rise with every movement she made. Finally, when she managed to crawl off the man, her face was drenched in sweat, and her thick makeup had smeared into a mess, making her look utterly disheveled. The burning heat coursing through her body quickly alerted Luna to something unusual. She immediately checked her pulse with her right hand on her left wrist. In just a moment, her expression turned indescribable, and the corners of her mouth twitched uncontrollably. A seduction poison, and the lowest grade one at that? This was truly an insult to her, a dignified ghost doctor. Reaching for her waist, she found nothing. Luna frowned, blinking. Where were her needles? Looking down at the unfamiliar clothing she was now wearing, Luna's face darkened. Who had changed her clothes? No matter how skillful one might be, you can't cook without rice. Without her needles, how was she supposed to detoxify herself? Though this seduction poison was low grade, its effects were still tormenting enough. Raising her head to look at the only man in the room who could serve as an antidote, Luna suddenly froze. The man was stunningly handsome. The high, straight, and flawless bridge of his nose, the thin yet seductive lips, and the perfect, blemish-free face, so stunningly beautiful that it left no room for criticism. One could only wonder, if those tightly shut eyes were to open, just how much unparalleled charm would they reveal. Her gaze unconsciously drifted downward, and Luna suddenly froze in shock. Chapter 2. Handsome man, emergency rescue needed. She. Her eyes had somehow managed to see through the tattered clothes of the man, revealing his entire physique. Luna, who was known as the ghost doctor of the Bureau of Artifice, had a unique ability that secured her position there. Without some extraordinary talent, entering the Bureau of Artifice was nearly impossible. Her special ability was her eyes, which could function like a full-body scanner, seeing through and diagnosing any ailment within a person. Of course, using the power of her eyes required deliberate focus. But at this moment, she had merely glanced briefly without activating her intent, so her sight should have been no different from an ordinary person's. Yet, her eyes betrayed her changing in an uncontrollable manner. The man's physique before her could only be described as unparalleled perfection, from the enticing Adam's apple to the alluring collarbone, followed by a firm chest and sculpted 8-pack abs. His body was devoid of any excess fat, exuding an irresistible charm. As Luna marveled in awe, she suddenly felt a warm sensation at the tip of her nose. Instinctively raising her hand, she was greeted by the sight of her bloodied palm. Luna froze on the spot. She had actually gotten a nosebleed from looking at a handsome man's body? How embarrassing. No! It must be due to the seductive poison. She absolutely refused to take the blame herself. With that thought, Luna felt slightly better, but the heat within her body grew increasingly intense, nearly driving her to collapse. Moments later, Luna's eyes lit up as she stared at the man beside her, a strange glint flashing within them. A handsome man was right here. Why worry about not having an antidote? Handsome man, emergency rescue needed. With that, Luna lunged toward the man in a hurry. Perhaps due to her weakened state, she miscalculated her movement and collided directly into him, accidentally biting his lip and drawing blood. The metallic taste of blood instantly permeated the air. It hurts! Luna's eyes brimmed with tears, her voice unintentionally soft and delicate due to the effects of the seductive poison. But as she looked up, she was met with a pair of breathtakingly beautiful violet eyes. Just as she had imagined, the man's open eyes were stunning beyond belief. The trace of blood at the corner of his lips didn't diminish his beauty. Instead, it added a sinister allure. However, those eyes were as cold as the winter frost, chilling to the bone. Instinctively, Luna hesitated, but her gaze remained fixed on the man before her. She couldn't help it. She was a hopeless admirer of beauty. Get lost! Darius Knight swallowed the metallic taste of blood in his mouth and spat out the word, his voice brimming with stormy rage. Hearing this, Luna narrowed her eyes, the initial infatuation in her gaze now tinged with danger. Get lost? In this world, no one has ever dared to tell the demon Dr. Luna to get lost. This guy, he's really bold. Unfortunately for him, she doesn't respond well to threats. The more forceful he is, the more determined she becomes to have him. Thinking that, the corners of Luna's lips curled into a sly smile. I won't get lost. What can you do about it? As she spoke, Luna casually brushed her hand against his chest, then leaned in even closer under his icy gaze. Darius Knight glared intensely at the ugly woman in front of him, the veins on his forehead bulging, and the sweet metallic taste in his throat growing stronger by the second, yet he could do nothing. This sense of helplessness made him almost want to destroy everything. But just at that moment, he felt a soft hand grasp his wrist, and a flicker of surprise flashed across his eyes. Luna held her breath as she checked his pulse, an instinctive reaction from her profession. The man before her was clearly no ordinary person. His demeanor alone spoke volumes. Yet, when it came to action, he only spoke without acting. Such anomalies piqued her curiosity. However, the moment she checked his pulse, she was startled. Luna quickly leaped back from him, landing hard on the ground, her mind snapping into clarity. Ignoring the pain in her backside, Luna focused her consciousness and began examining the man's body. As expected, there was a parasite in his chest. Moreover, the man before her had suffered severe internal injuries from some unknown force and had accumulated various toxins in his body. It was a miracle he was even alive, standing before her. More than that, it was far too dangerous. If she recklessly treated him as an antidote, she would surely meet a quicker demise. Compared to the discomfort caused by the enchantment poison, her life was undoubtedly more important. Still, if you beg me, I will save you. How about that? Chapter 3. So close yet so far, what a pity. When Luna uttered this, her tone carried a hint of mockery and provocation, clearly inviting trouble. Unfortunately, she had no idea how hideous her face looked at the moment, so much so that it was hard for others to even look at her directly. Combined with her provocative expression, it only made others feel repulsed. Though Darius Knight was astonished by the series of changes in the woman before him, he didn't believe she could truly save him. After all, his condition, her face, so unspeakably hideous, further tested his patience. To avoid worsening his internal injuries, he closed his eyes lightly, choosing to ignore her to keep his peace of mind. Seeing this, Luna pouted in discontent. Clearly, her abilities were being doubted. This irked her greatly, sparking an unfamiliar desire to prove herself. A feeling she had never experienced before. Slowly getting up, she glanced around and fixed her gaze on the dressing table not far away. "Meeting me is your good fortune," she said. With that, Luna walked toward the dressing table. Hearing the commotion, Darius Knight frowned but kept his eyes shut. He only heard the sounds of rummaging nearby, stirring suspicion in his heart. Sensing the woman approaching again, Darius Knight slowly opened his eyes. What greeted him was the sight of the ugly woman holding a hairpin, aiming it towards him. A murderous glint flared in his eyes. "What are you trying to do?" His cold, emotionless voice echoed, almost making Luna drop the silver hairpin in her hand. "Humph, what do you think?" Luna smirked meaningfully, her gaze suddenly sharp. Without hesitation, the silver hairpin in her hand moved swiftly, stabbing directly at Darius Knight. In the blink of an eye, fresh wounds began to appear on Darius Knight's body, blood seeping out. At first, following Luna's every movement, Darius Knight's pupils contracted, his eyes brimming with murderous intent. But very quickly, that killing intent was replaced by astonishment. He seemed to feel the condition of his body gradually improving. Though the change was subtle, it was something that had never happened before. Could it be that the woman before him truly had the ability to help him? Thinking this, Darius Knight's violet eyes grew even deeper and more unfathomable. If his assumption was correct, sparing this woman's life for the time being might not be out of the question. Luna, completely unaware that she had just narrowly escaped death, was drenched in sweat at this moment. The poison tormenting her body began to act up again, draining all her strength. "So close yet so far, what a pity," Luna muttered with a sigh as she glanced at Darius Knight. Before his expression could fully darken, Luna grabbed a silver hairpin and stabbed it straight into her thigh. After a brief moment of clarity, she clenched her teeth and turned toward the large wooden tub she had just discovered. With a loud splash, the room fell silent once more. Darius Knight's stunning violet eyes now reflected a complex mix of emotions. "Your Highness, how could the future princess consort of the Prince of Chi possibly be in our establishment? Surely you must be mistaken? The Prince of Chi and my elder sister haven't even had their wedding yet. Calling her the princess consort now seems a bit premature, doesn't it? The young lady is correct, but this is the celestial room." "Fine, whether true or not, we'll know once we go inside and see for ourselves. Your attempt to block us, could it be you're hiding something?" Luna opened her eyes amidst the commotion, her face full of irritation. She despised being disturbed while sleeping, especially when her body felt so uncomfortable. Suddenly recalling something, Luna quickly looked toward the pile of rubble, empty. Where was the handsome man from last night? Moreover, wasn't she just in cold water? How did she end up sleeping on the ground? As confusion clouded her mind, the door was suddenly kicked open from the outside. Chapter 4. She actually time-traveled? Luna lifted her head to look at the people entering. Leading the group was a young man around 20 years old, with handsome yet somewhat brooding features. His gaze at her seemed as if he wanted to tear her apart. Did they know each other? Why was he looking at her like that? Was he crazy or what? Not wanting to bother with someone so erratic, Luna shifted her gaze and noticed a beautiful woman in a pink dress standing beside the man. Looking at this woman's appearance, she felt a strange sense of familiarity. "Elder sister, is it really you? How did you end up like this?" The woman in pink, upon seeing Luna, appeared utterly shocked. She took several steps back, her face filled with sorrow, as if Luna had committed some grave crime. Wait, elder sister? Did they know each other? As she was pondering this, a surge of unfamiliar memories flooded into her mind, striking her like a bolt of lightning. She had time-traveled. She had become Luna Claire, the legitimate daughter of the Claire Manor in Phoenixwood Kingdom, the great Azure continent. However, the original Luna Claire was ill-fated. Her mother passed away during childbirth, and her elder brother died unexpectedly when she was just 1 year old. From then on, she was seen as a bringer of misfortune, and was sent to a remote countryside to fend for herself. 3 months ago, the young emperor, for reasons unknown, issued an imperial decree to marry the legitimate daughter of Claire Manor to an insignificant prince without power or status, Marcus Knight, the Duke of Tay. As the celebrated daughter of the Claire family and renowned as the most talented woman of her time, Vivian Claire naturally refused to marry such a useless prince. Thus, Luna Claire became the perfect substitute. After all, the imperial edict only mentioned the legitimate daughter, without specifying a name, so this act wasn't considered defiance of the decree. If not for this situation, it was likely that no one in the Claire family would even remember Luna Claire existed. Luna frowned slightly, a trace of pity rising in her heart for the original owner of this body. She raised her head to look at the leading man, and from the conversation earlier outside the door, she finally understood who he was. He was none other than Duke Marcus Knight, her betrothed, with whom she was supposed to wed. Yesterday should have been their wedding day. The auspicious hour had arrived, but Duke Marcus did not come to Claire Manor to fetch the bride. The Prime Minister, the father of this body, fearing repercussions on Vivian Claire, had hired someone to send her to Duke Marcus's manor. Surely, there had never been a case of a bride personally going to her groom's door. When the bridal sedan arrived at Duke Marcus's manor, a large crowd had gathered outside to watch the spectacle, but the groom was nowhere to be seen. It was only when Marcus Knight appeared that he declared the auspicious hour had passed, and postponed the wedding to the next day. Afterward, she was sent to a small courtyard near Duke Marcus's manor. When she awoke, the original owner was horrified to find herself in a brothel, with a despicable man attempting to take advantage of her. Even now, Luna could still feel the utter despair and fury of the original owner. She just didn't know when the original owner's soul had departed, leaving her to wake up in the room of a handsome man. Luna looked at Marcus Knight, her gaze icy cold. Regarding what happened yesterday, if it wasn't his doing, she absolutely wouldn't believe it. Too cowardly to ask for an annulment, yet resorting to such despicable means to deal with a pitiable woman, truly unforgivable. Meeting her gaze, which seemed as if it wanted to devour him alive, Marcus Knight was startled and involuntarily took half a step back. When he realized what he had done, his expression grew even darker and more unpleasant. Him, afraid of an ugly woman from the countryside? His eyes moved away from Luna Claire's garish face, landing on her body, unable to conceal the disgust in his gaze. Following Marcus Knight's gaze, Luna looked down at herself. A tattered, thin red robe barely covered her body, exposing her arms and legs. To her, there was nothing wrong with it. After all, she was someone who had worn bikinis before, possessing a modern soul. Of course, in the eyes of others, Luna Claire's appearance could only be described as scandalous and indecent. This was a brothel, where most people came seeking pleasure. Seeing a scantily clad woman would usually be an opportunity to feast their eyes. But Luna Claire was too unattractive. They only felt their eyes sting from looking at her, so no one had any improper thoughts about her. Most just looked down on her with contempt. Shameless! Chapter 5. The Duchess becomes a concubine. Seeing Luna Claire remain unflustered, even calmly observing her surroundings, Marcus Knight's eyes filled with even more disdain. Hearing his words, Luna sneered mockingly. Shameless? Do you even possess such a thing? As she spoke, her eyes swept over Marcus Knight, as if searching for this so-called shame. Seeing Luna Claire like this, Marcus Knight was so furious he was left speechless. This ignorant woman dared to imply he had no sense of shame? Especially with that mocking gaze, half smiling, half not, making him feel as though she could see right through him. Luna Claire, you committed such a disgraceful act, and yet show no remorse. How could you be worthy of the care and upbringing provided by Chancellor Claire? Marcus Knight said angrily, while Luna looked at him as if he were a fool. Chancellor Claire had never raised her. The entire capital knew that. Elder sister, you've done such an outrageous and disgraceful thing, dragging both Claire Manor and Duke Marcus's manor into it. Why don't you hurry and admit your fault? At this moment, a woman in a red dress, unwilling to be ignored, spoke up hastily, her expression one of feigned concern, as if saying, I'm only doing this for your sake, while looking at Luna Claire. Luna gazed deeply at the woman in the red dress. Willow Claire, the illegitimate daughter of Claire Manor, had bullied the original Luna numerous times after her return to the manor. Now, pretending to be virtuous in front of Prince Chi? If there wasn't some scheme behind this, even a cat wouldn't believe it. So what you mean is, you, a young lady who hasn't even married, coming to a brothel isn't disgraceful or scandalous? Admit fault? What fault did she have to admit? Moreover, what good would it do to admit fault now? This White Lotus truly should have stayed silent. Every word she spoke was revolting. Elder sister, how could you say that about me? I only heard you had gone missing and was worried, so I... Willow Claire, seemingly not expecting Luna Claire to respond this way, turned pale. Her eyes brimmed with tears, her voice faltered, as if she wanted to speak but couldn't, looking utterly pitiful. This display stirred the compassion of many of the men watching, their gazes toward Luna Claire growing increasingly disdainful. Miss Claire, the third lady is only showing concern for you. Why are you speaking so aggressively? Exactly, you lack virtue as a woman. Don't assume everyone is like you. Everyone took turns condemning Luna Claire. Luna Claire glanced at those accusing her, but remained indifferent. Wasting time arguing with a crowd of gossipers? She certainly wasn't that idle. The corners of her lips curved slightly, as she looked toward Willow Claire. With so many people in Claire Manor, why is it only the third sister who came here? Or perhaps, the third sister was the first to know I went missing? A flicker of panic appeared in Willow Claire's eyes, as she subconsciously stepped back, then looked toward Marcus Knight for help. Seeing Willow Claire rendered speechless, a trace of irritation flashed in Marcus Knight's eyes. Yet, he still cast a gentle glance at Willow Claire, his gaze softening slightly. However, when his eyes shifted to Luna Claire, they were filled only with disdain. Luna Claire, stop spouting nonsense here. Compared to you, Willow is infinitely purer. Marcus Knight said coldly. Hearing this, Luna Claire nodded in agreement, her expression one of understanding. Of course, a white lotus is bound to be pure. You're absolutely right. Marcus Knight was momentarily at a loss for words, his expression slightly awkward at her response. At that moment, Luna spoke up. What does your highness intend to do? As soon as she finished speaking, Luna Claire let out a long yawn, her face showing boredom. After soaking in cold water all night, she still felt unwell. She'd rather go rest than waste time arguing here. Seeing her nonchalant demeanor, Marcus Knight grew angrier, but still stated his purpose. You are no longer pure, and now that His Majesty has granted you marriage, you naturally cannot become the Duchess of Marcus's Manor. From now on, you will only be a concubine in my household. This declaration was like throwing scraps to Luna Claire. Chapter 6. This woman truly knows how to put on a show. Humph. Luna Claire chuckled, but her eyes turned icy. So, this scumbag Duke Marcus wanted to play this game? How naive. Did he think she was the original host of this body? Someone who would shed tears of gratitude over this? Indeed, the imperial decree didn't specify Vivian Claire's name, so Claire Manor had used her, the legitimate daughter, as a substitute. It was also true that the decree only mentioned marriage, but didn't specify her becoming the main wife. Thus, the Duke wanted her as a concubine and staged this farce. What a waste of effort. In this era, it was customary for a woman who had lost her chastity to consider herself lucky if someone accepted her. But unfortunately for him, her soul didn't belong to this era. So wasn't Duke Marcus being overly self-assured? What are you laughing at? Marcus Knight demanded angrily. Nothing, Luna Claire replied calmly. I just find the Duke incredibly naive. What do you mean? Marcus Knight felt humiliated. Hearing that, Luna Claire stopped laughing, her gaze turning icy cold. Duke Consort, listen carefully now. Luna Claire stepped forward, her sharp gaze making Marcus Knight shiver. Don't even mention being a concubine. If you wanted me to be the Duke Consort, I wouldn't care. You? Marcus Knight was stunned, not expecting Luna Claire to react this way. Then, in anger, he shouted, Are you defying the decree? Chapter 6. This woman truly knows how to act. Isn't it Duke Consort who defies the decree? Luna Claire sneered coldly. Why did you miss the auspicious hour yesterday? And why am I here in this brothel today? Isn't it all perfectly clear to Duke Consort? Then, her gaze shifted towards Willow Claire beside her, carrying a hint of meaning. It seems that in Duke Consort's heart, this younger sister of mine holds quite a significant place. The panic in Willow Claire's eyes earlier, and the fleeting displeasure in Marcus Knight's gaze. Luna Claire had seen it all. If what Willow Claire said was true, that they had heard she had gone missing, then no matter how insignificant Claire Manor might regard her, they would never allow an unmarried young lady to step forward in such a situation. Thus, today's events could not possibly be unrelated to Willow Claire. The onlookers followed Luna Claire's gaze towards Marcus Knight and Willow Claire, just in time to see Willow Claire stepping away from Marcus Knight. Elder sister, how could you misunderstand me like this? Willow Claire looked frightened, as if truly wronged. Then, with a hint of embarrassment, she added, I and King of Chi, we share feelings, but we remain within the bounds of propriety. It's not as you think. The crowd, who had been pondering over the events of yesterday, now felt that Duke Consort missing the auspicious hour seemed deliberate. Luna Claire's appearance in the brothel today only deepened their suspicions. At this moment, Willow Claire suddenly spoke, interrupting their train of thought. Then, a wave of murmur spread through the crowd. Feelings, but within the bounds of propriety? Wasn't that an admission by the third lady that there was something between her and Duke Consort? So it turned out the woman in Duke Consort's heart was actually the third lady. The crowd looked at Luna Claire, then at Willow Claire, and finally their gazes landed on Marcus Knight. What do I think? Luna Claire looked at Willow Claire with a mocking expression. This woman truly knows how to act. Elder sister, why must you push me like this? Willow Claire finally couldn't hold back her tears. I know my status is not as high as yours. I dare not dream of being with King of Chi, but I only wish to stay by his side. Such a display of deep affection moved many in the crowd to pity. Duke Consort and the third lady truly seemed like a perfect match, while the eldest lady merely relied on her status as the legitimate daughter. How could she compare to the third lady? Chapter 7. Their master's taste is truly heavy at this moment. Everyone around looked at Luna Claire as if she were a third party destroying a relationship, their gazes filled with disdain. They completely forgot that this was a marriage decreed by the emperor, nor did they consider the innocence of the eldest daughter of the Claire family. Luna Claire found it amusing. Indeed, those who know how to cry will be comforted, and beautiful people will always be forgiven and understood more easily. Fortunately, she wasn't the original owner of this body, and didn't care about the words of these people. After all, they weren't important. Moreover, that scumbag and the White Lotus girl truly deserved each other. She just wondered what he planned to do next. Thinking this, she looked towards Marcus Knight. She was quite curious to see his next move. After all, the words she had just spoken, though unnoticed by those present, if they reached the emperor's ears, one could easily imagine the predicament the Prince of Chi would face. She wanted to see how he would resolve this matter. At this moment, Marcus Knight was furious, almost exploding. He had thought that after this little drama, Luna Claire would obediently follow him to become his concubine. That way, he wouldn't bear the crime of defying the imperial decree. Who would have thought Luna Claire wouldn't act according to common expectations, and even saw through his schemes? If this matter reached his seventh brother, with his suspicious nature, he might accuse Marcus of deceiving the emperor. Thinking this, Marcus Knight glanced at Willow Claire, who was crying her heart out beside him. Though she couldn't compare to Vivian Claire in his heart, she was still a beauty. Moreover, her weeping provided him with a convenient excuse. With this in mind, a hint of pity appeared in Marcus Knight's eyes as he stepped forward and pulled Willow Claire into his arms. Luna Claire, the one this prince cares about is the third Mississippi. Today, I will enter the palace to report everything clearly. This prince will not marry you. Handle your matters yourself. After speaking, Marcus Knight hurriedly left with Willow Claire in his arms. The others, seeing there was nothing more interesting to watch, gradually dispersed. As a result, the story of the eldest daughter, Luna Claire, quickly spread throughout the streets and alleys. Rumors circulated about her being rejected by Duke Marcus's manor, missing the auspicious hour, entering a brothel and ruining her reputation, and then being publicly rejected by Prince Chi right in front of everyone. Luna Claire's reputation had reached rock bottom. In contrast, Prince Chi was praised as a devoted lover by storytellers in tea houses and taverns. The public believed Luna Claire was like a toad lusting after a swan's meat. After all, wasn't she ugly? This matter quickly reached Night Manor. Master, the woman from yesterday is the eldest daughter of Claire Manor. Victor Moore was astonished upon hearing the news. This eldest daughter was said to be a reincarnated Jinx. Would she bring misfortune to the master? Darius Knight held a teacup and took a light sip. His eyes were as cold as a deep, icy abyss, and with just a single word, his commanding aura could overwhelm the world. Does the master have any plans? Victor Moore couldn't help but ask curiously. Though Miss Claire Manor was a bit unattractive and her life full of misfortune, she still seemed to suit his master's taste. Otherwise, why would he inquire about her? Surely, the rice had already been cooked into a meal. Darius Knight cast a glance at him, and Victor Moore immediately shrank back, realizing he might have said too much. However, at that moment, Darius Knight spoke. "Send someone to watch over her. Just make sure she stays alive." As for everything else, it didn't matter. But to Victor Moore's ears, these words carried a different meaning. After all, since when did the master care about unrelated people? Indeed, his master's taste was truly peculiar. Chapter 8. This Miss Clare Manor is truly fierce by noon. The sun shone warmly. However, in front of Clare Manor's gates, a disheveled woman in a red dress appeared, her attire tattered and worn. This woman was none other than Luna Clare. Still wearing the same ragged red bodice from earlier that morning, she walked straight here, attracting numerous curious gazes along the way. As a result, the area in front of Clare Manor was now as bustling as a marketplace. Ignoring all the noise and stares around her, Luna Clare focused on the grand red gates before her. Quite impressive. As a temporary shelter, it would do. In truth, after leaving the brothel, Luna Clare had thought about leaving the capital and roaming the martial world freely. But that was just a thought. She was no longer the Luna of the past, and this was not a modern, open society. She was now empty-handed, without money or power. If she recklessly ventured out into the martial world, she would likely meet her end in no time. Thus, she decided to first return to Clare Manor, gradually build her strength, and then plan her next moves. Moreover, having taken over the original owner's body, she felt obligated to seek justice for all the suffering the original owner had endured, didn't she? First and foremost, she had to make those who bullied her live in discomfort. From today onwards, she was Luna Clare. If the Clare Manor still wanted to live peacefully, it would be nothing but a pipe dream. Thinking so, a mischievous glint flashed in Luna Clare's eyes. She straightened her back and strode toward Clare Manor. "Stop right there!" The two guards at the gate simultaneously raised their spears and shouted, "This is Clare Manor, not a place for stray dogs and cats to wander in." Hearing this, Luna Clare raised an eyebrow. Was this supposed to intimidate her? Her gaze swept over the two guards, the corners of her mouth lifting slightly, though her eyes turned icy cold. Anyone who knew her would understand. This was a sign she was about to lose her temper. "Do I look like someone ordinary?" Luna Clare's voice carried a hint of danger. The two guards shivered under her gaze, but stubbornly replied, "No idlers are allowed to loiter around Clare Manor's entrance." Smack! 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 Before the guard could finish, Luna Clare struck without hesitation. Afterwards, she glanced at her hand and muttered, "It's still not as convenient as using silver needles." After all, hitting people made her hands hurt. Servants who don't know how to speak properly should remember this lesson well. Everyone around. Is this really a way to teach someone a lesson they won't forget? The entrance to Clare Manor fell silent. All eyes were on the two guards with swollen faces, looking utterly pitiful. This young lady of Clare Manor was truly fierce. "You!" Bang! One of the guards, finally regaining his senses, pointed at Luna Clare and tried to speak. Unfortunately, he only managed to utter one word before Luna Clare kicked him away. He lost a few front teeth and fainted. Everyone around. Such brutality and ruthlessness, it was unbearable to watch. Was this domineering young lady really someone from the countryside? Everyone couldn't help but doubt it. However, Luna Clare's gaze quietly fell on another guard at this moment. Bang! "Please spare me, young lady. I won't dare any more." The guard, catching Luna Clare's gaze, thought he was about to be kicked away as well. Terrified, he dropped to his knees, frantically bowing and pleading for forgiveness. The young lady was no longer the same as before. She was too fierce, and he didn't want to get beaten. "Weak!" Luna Clare uttered. Everyone. It's not that he's weak, but that she's too heavy-handed. Everyone thought Luna Claire, after disciplining the guard, would enter the Prime Minister's residence. However, to their surprise, not only did she show no intention of going in, but she also plopped herself down on the stone steps in front of the entrance. What is she planning to do now? Chapter 9. Someone's about to have bad luck. While everyone was still confused, Luna Claire suddenly pointed at the guard, who had just knelt, and pleaded. Calm yet arrogant, she said. You, go inside and tell someone to come out and greet this lady. Since those inside wouldn't let her in properly, and were trying to humiliate her, how could she possibly let them succeed? If they wanted to cause a scene, then the commotion must be huge, otherwise, wouldn't it disappoint them? The aftermath of making such a big fuss might end up being more than anyone could handle. Thinking of this, she couldn't help but feel a little anticipation. At this moment, a glimmer of excitement sparkled in Luna Claire's eyes. Someone was about to have bad luck. The guard, scared out of his wits by Luna Claire, dared not disobey her and hurriedly ran into the residence. The people around exchanged glances, increasingly unable to comprehend Luna Claire. A lady brought back from the countryside, unloved, and even having lost her chastity, would the Prime Minister's residence truly send someone to fetch her? Was this eldest daughter daydreaming in broad daylight? In the garden of the Prime Minister's residence, Arthur Clare, the Prime Minister, sat with his wife, Eleanor Clare, and their second daughter, Vivian Clare, sipping tea in the pavilion. The atmosphere was rather heavy. In recent days, the Prime Minister's residence had become the laughingstock of the capital, and Prime Minister Clare was fuming over the matter. At that moment, a pig's head appeared before the three of them. As soon as they saw it, all three were startled, because the swollen face resembling a pig's head was utterly horrifying. Chapter 9. Someone's about to have bad luck. The guard, standing dumbfounded with a face full of despair, looked like he wanted to cry but couldn't. Still, he gritted his teeth and relayed Luna Claire's exact words. Bang! Arthur Clare slammed the table and stood up abruptly. But after rising, he said nothing further. His face turned red, and his facial muscles twitched incessantly. Father, elder sister is thoughtless. Please don't get so angry that it affects your health. Vivian Clare quickly stood up to console him, flawlessly playing the role of a dutiful daughter, assuming Arthur Clare was enraged to this extent. Indeed, she deserved to be the object of admiration for countless noble sons in the capital. Draped in a crescent moon-patterned silk gown with a flowing veil, her snowy white skin, and a face as beautiful as a painting, her every gesture exuded the grace of a refined lady. Hearing his daughter's comforting words, Arthur Clare's facial muscles twitched even more. Could he admit that he wasn't angry but that his hand hurt too much from slamming the table? Hiding his reddened hand within his sleeve, he glanced at Vivian Clare. She's older than you by a year. How can she still not be as sensible as you? Vivian Clare was about to respond, but Prime Minister Clare raised his hand to signal her to stay silent. You don't need to say more. With that, he stepped outside. Husband, where are you going? Are you truly planning to go out? Eleanor Clare hurriedly stood up. Though over 30, time seemed to have favored Eleanor Clare. Her mature and graceful beauty could easily stir feelings of compassion in anyone. Prime Minister Clare stopped walking but said nothing. Seeing this, Eleanor Clare hurriedly said, My lord, everything I've done has been for you. Now that Luna's matter is escalating, if you step in, wouldn't it? Eleanor Clare didn't finish her sentence, leaving only a worried expression, but her meaning was clear. Everything about yesterday and today had already been arranged. If Prime Minister Clare intervened at this moment, it would only make him a laughingstock. If Prime Minister Clare had even a shred of fatherly affection for Luna Clare, it might have been understandable. But as it stood, his feelings toward her were nothing but disgust. She's completely ruined my reputation." Prime Minister Clare fumed angrily. Eleanor Clare gently patted Prime Minister Clare's chest, comforting him. "After all, Luna is still your flesh and blood, my lord. Please try to be more forgiving." Her soft, soothing voice would usually calm Prime Minister Clare's anger somewhat. But for some reason, upon hearing these words, Prime Minister Clare's expression darkened even further. "I have no such cursed daughter." Chapter 10. Is she arguing with a dog again? Although furious, Prime Minister Clare heeded Eleanor Clare's advice and entrusted her to handle the matter. Eleanor Clare, now in charge, couldn't hide the gleam of satisfaction in her eyes, and promptly instructed Mom Mary Jones to head out. At this moment, outside the gates of Clare Manor remained silent, giving everyone another chance to mock Luna Clare. Luna Clare simply closed her eyes, resting calmly, unbothered. How ridiculous! Would she stoop so low as to argue with barking dogs? At that moment, the main door finally stirred. "Young miss, the madam has sent me to invite you inside," said Mary Jones, the old housekeeper, her tone respectful, though her eyes betrayed a hint of disdain. Luna Clare sat still on the ground, unmoving as if in a deep slumber. "Young miss!" Mary Jones raised her voice, clearly irritated. This country bumpkin, did she truly think she was a phoenix? Luna Clare slowly opened her eyes, a cold gleam flashing in them. A small pebble, seemingly appearing out of nowhere, rested in her hand. With a swift motion, she flicked it directly at the pressure point on Mary Jones's leg. Thud! The sound of knees colliding with the stone floor was painful just to hear. Everyone instinctively took a step back, glancing at Mary Jones with pity in their eyes. Mary Jones was in so much pain that she couldn't speak, only staring at Luna Clare in disbelief, as if unable to comprehend what had just happened. "Oh dear, Mary Jones, what are you doing? Why are you bowing so deeply to me?" Luna Clare rose to her feet, feigning surprise. Then, with tears brimming in her eyes, she looked inside the house, her voice filled with grievance. "Why hasn't Father come out to greet me?" Acting was a mandatory skill for agents of the Bureau of Artifice. If she wanted, winning a Best Actress award would be as easy as flipping her hand. The crowd was still in shock. The eldest Miss Clare's expression shifted as unpredictably as the weather in June, leaving them utterly baffled. At the same time, they felt Luna Clare was overestimating herself. For the master to personally welcome her, she'd need to have extraordinary talents like the second Miss Clare, wouldn't she? If outsiders thought this, what more could be said for Mary Jones, who had always looked down on Luna Clare? "Young miss, the master is busy with countless important matters. How could he possibly spare time for such a trivial thing?" Mary Jones, humiliated and in pain, had a face dark with anger, and her tone was naturally far from polite. Hearing this, Luna Clare's tears began to flow freely. Her pitiful expression was truly unbearable to look at, because it was so unsightly. Everyone quietly averted their eyes, but perked up their ears to listen. "Although I am not the one replacing second sister to married Prince Chi, I have borne so much humiliation in her stead. Father, would you truly disown this daughter of yours over this matter? If so, I might as well return to my hometown and leave my life to fate." As soon as Luna Clare finished speaking, the scene erupted into chaos. No matter how unsightly Luna Clare's appearance was at the moment, everyone still stared at her in disbelief. What did the eldest Miss Clare just say? Did she say she replaced the second Miss to get married? Could it be that the marriage decree from His Majesty was originally intended for the second Miss? If that were true, then the Clare family would be guilty of deceiving the Emperor. In that case, everything the eldest Miss Clare had endured today was all for the sake of the second Miss, wasn't it? Even though the outcome would undoubtedly have been different if it had been the second Miss, This entire situation arose because of her. If the Clare Manor truly disowned Luna Clare over this, it would indeed be too cruel. Those with a shred of conscience finally began to feel sympathy for Luna Clare. Maid Mary Jones, seeing the situation unfold, immediately grew anxious. What is this country bumpkin maid thinking? How dare she slander the second young lady like this? The second young lady, with her fairy-like beauty? How could she endure being clung to and falsely accused like that? The more Mary Jones thought about it, the more anxious she became. Ignoring the number of people watching, she raised her hand, intending to slap Luna Clare across the face. Asterisk. Smack! Asterisk Chapter 11. Could it be the legitimate daughter isn't like one? The loud slap echoed through the air, making many instinctively cover their faces. The sound alone was enough to make one wince in pain. This eldest daughter, Clare, was already unattractive. If she were to become even uglier, it would be unbearable to look at her. Fearing their eyes might be scarred by the sight, the onlookers instinctively averted their gazes, mentally preparing themselves. But when they finally looked up, they were met with a collective gasp. What just happened? Why was it Mary Jones who ended up being hit? At this moment, Mary Jones' face was swollen, with the corner of her mouth cracked open, her injuries even worse than those of the two guards earlier. Such terrifying strength. Mary Jones, why would you raise your hand against me? Luna Clare looked genuinely heartbroken. In truth, her own hand stung from the impact. Mary Jones. She was still in a daze, unable to recover from the shock of being hit. Mary Jones, are you blaming me for the failed marriage arrangement? But if that's the case, why didn't you let second sister marry herself in the first place? Luna Clare continued to feign innocence. Vivian Clare herself didn't want to marry, yet she wanted to push the original owner into the fire pit. Could someone like that have a kind heart? Moreover, whether it was letting the original owner take the back door before or intimidating her today, how could any of it not be related to Eleanor Clare? The original owner's life in Clare Manor was vivid in her memories. Weren't all those schemes orchestrated by Eleanor Clare? Given all this, how could she not fiercely retaliate against that mother and daughter duo? And now that she had appeared, it was inevitable that Vivian Clare and Clare Manor would be dragged into the storm along with her. Why wouldn't she do it? Luna, you are the legitimate daughter of Clare Manor. The imperial decree for marriage is the emperor's will. How could there be any talk of substitution? At that moment, a gentle voice rang out. It was Eleanor Clare. Ever since Mama Mary Jones had left, Eleanor Clare had felt uneasy, so she ordered someone to keep an eye on the situation outside. Unexpectedly, Luna Clare dragged her daughter into the mess, forcing her to step forward reluctantly. Luna Clare had long anticipated Eleanor Clare's appearance, so her expression remained unchanged as she looked at Eleanor Clare with a puzzled gaze. Madam, even my father has forgotten my existence. How could the Emperor possibly remember me? Luna Clare's face at that moment looked somewhat innocent, like a child earnestly asking an adult a serious question. Eleanor Clare was so infuriated that she almost spat blood, but she forced a smile. Luna, you are the eldest legitimate daughter of Clare Manor. How could your father forget you? Eleanor Clare thought her words would silence Luna Clare. But was Luna Clare that kind of person? Clearly not. If father hasn't forgotten me, then why was I nearly starved to death in the countryside? Moreover, the second sister is also a legitimate daughter. She could enter through the main gate, so why was I only allowed to use the back door? And while she has a whole entourage of servants, I only have one maid. After saying this, Luna Clare looked at Eleanor Clare. Could it be that there's a difference between one legitimate daughter and another? Luna Clare had just finished speaking, and the crowd grew restless. So, the Prime Minister's manor treated their legitimate daughter so harshly? In an instant, The onlookers began to view the Prime Minister's manner differently. Even their gazes toward Eleanor Clare changed significantly. Eleanor Clare was fuming inside, but couldn't afford to lose her temper at the moment. In the end, she had no choice but to coax Luna Clare into entering the manor. The large doors closed, and it seemed as though everything had calmed down. However, the capital was about to be stirred into chaos. At that moment, in a small alley not far away, Victor Moore wore a puzzled expression. "Master, it seems I can no longer understand this eldest Miss Clare." Looking up, he noticed his master staring intently in a certain direction. Following his master's gaze, Victor Moore's face immediately contorted as if he'd seen a ghost. Chapter 12. Only one who refuses to shoulder responsibility. "Master, this..." Victor Moore hesitated to say something. Swish. The curtain of the sedan chair dropped, clearly indicating that the person inside had no intention of listening further. Victor Moore could only close his mouth reluctantly. Luna Clare was led into the grand hall of Clare Manor. At this moment, the hall was quite crowded. Vivian Clare and Willow Clare stood on either side, while Prime Minister Arthur Clare sat in the center, exuding an oppressive atmosphere. As Luna Clare entered, all eyes turned to her. Arthur Clare, however, fixed her with a cold, piercing glare, as if he wanted to tear her apart. That expression? Was this how a father looked at his daughter? It was more like he was staring at an enemy. "You wretched child, kneel down now," Arthur Clare roared. Hearing this, Luna Clare raised an eyebrow, looking at Arthur Clare with a half-mocking, half-questioning expression. "Why should I kneel?" Kneeling to the heavens, kneeling to the earth, kneeling to her mother, that was acceptable. But kneeling to a scumbag father, like the original host's biological father? Never. You commit such disgraceful acts and still ask why you should kneel? Why didn't you just die out there? Arthur Clare's chest heaved with anger, his heart filled with resentment. The events of yesterday had already humiliated him, and today had turned into an even bigger joke for the entire city. If his disgraceful daughter had died outside, at least he wouldn't have to face this embarrassment. But now, Chapter 12, only one who refuses to shoulder responsibility. If only he had known this day would come, he would have drowned her at birth. At this moment, Arthur Clare completely forgot that all the ridicule he faced was a result of his own actions. Luna Clare listened to Arthur Clare's words, feeling indignant on behalf of the original host. Her gaze turned even colder. Eleanor Clare stepped forward, gently patting Arthur Clare's chest. "My lord, please calm down. Luna didn't do it intentionally. This accursed daughter is about to drag Clare Manor into the abyss, and you're still saying she didn't do it intentionally?" Clearly, Eleanor Clare's attempt at consolation had backfired. Hearing this, Luna Clare casually glanced at Eleanor Clare before turning to Arthur Clare with a sarcastic tone. "Why did today's events happen? Doesn't father know the reason deep down?" If it weren't for Arthur Clare's greed for power and his reluctance to let Vivian Clare marry the powerless Prince Chi, how could the original host have ended up as a substitute? How could today's situation have unfolded? Did they think she was easy to bully and could take all the blame? Humph. Coincidentally, she was willing to shoulder many things, but taking the fall for others was not one of them. Being questioned like this, Arthur Clare thought of the cause and effect of the situation and became so furious that he was overwhelmed with shame. "You unfilial daughter, how dare you talk back to me? Guards, seize this ungrateful child and lock her up. An imperial decree has arrived." Before Arthur Clare could finish his sentence, a sharp voice interrupted everything. Arthur Clare flinched in shock, while Vivian Clare's face grew tense as she moved closer to Eleanor Clare, clutching her hand tightly as if disaster was imminent. Of course, the matter of swapping the imperial decree was neither small nor large, but they were already feeling guilty. How could they not be afraid? As expected, Arthur Clare, with his years of experience as Prime Minister, was the first to regain his composure. He reassured his wife and daughter with a calm look, then glared harshly at Luna Clare, who stood to the side, before leading the way to the main hall. When the Clare family stepped out into the main hall, they saw the eunuch delivering the decree, accompanied by several palace maids and attendants already waiting in the courtyard. "Your humble servant greets His Majesty. Long live the Emperor." Under Arthur Clare's lead, everyone in the Clare household, from master to servant, knelt down, filling the courtyard sparsely. Of course, there was one exception, Luna Clare. She remained standing straight, instantly becoming the focal point of Clare Manor. The courtyard was eerily silent. Finally, Luna Clare pouted, looking somewhat reluctant, before kneeling down. What else could she do? When in Rome, do as the Romans do. She wasn't foolish enough to think she could currently defy imperial authority. Chapter 13. The Strange Imperial Decree. By the mandate of heaven, the Emperor decrees, I have heard that Luna Clare, beloved daughter of Clare Manor, and Prince Chi have chosen their own paths in love. Henceforth, the previous engagement is annulled, and she is granted the freedom to choose her own partner. As a token of consolation, Luna Clare is bestowed a pair of jade earrings, a pair of pearl hairpins, and a pair of gold lotus-shaped hairpins. So it is decreed. As the eunuch read the decree aloud, trays of rewards were presented before everyone. The items bestowed by the palace were, of course, no ordinary treasures, but at this moment, no one paid them much attention. The events of the past 2 days had brought disgrace to both Clare Manor and the royal family. Yet, instead of punishment, the emperor had chosen to reward them. This decision left everyone deep in thought. Particularly troubling was the fact that Clare Manor had been involved in a scheme of deception. Eunuch Louis, what does His Majesty truly mean by this? After receiving the imperial decree, Arthur Clare looked at the eunuch, his expression filled with unease. Eunuch Louis, a close attendant of the emperor and a figure of considerable influence within the palace, showed no sign of intimidation, even when facing the current prime minister. General Clare, there's no need to worry. Today's crisis has passed, and you should be grateful for His Majesty's grace. Eunuch Louis replied cryptically, his words carrying an underlying message. Hearing this, Arthur Clare grew even more anxious, feeling as though he were sitting on pins and needles. Naturally, the faces of Eleanor Clare and Vivian Clare, standing behind him, turned pale as well. Meanwhile, Willow Clare's eyes were fixed intently on the treasures laid out on the trays. Her quick mind began scheming ways to claim them for herself. Regarding Luna Clare, the other person involved, she stood there quietly, like an outsider, showing no trace of emotion. Of course, this was only on the surface. In reality, Luna Clare's heart was in turmoil, feeling that this imperial decree was unusually strange. But what exactly was strange about it, she couldn't quite pinpoint. Lady Clare. Lady Clare? Eunuch Louis called out several times without receiving a response, his brows furrowing slightly. Luna Clare snapped back to reality, noticing Eunuch Louis's displeased expression. Apologies, I didn't realize you were calling me. Luna Clare responded, appearing both aggrieved and fearful. In truth, it was understandable. Neither she nor the original host of this body had ever been addressed as Lady Clare before. Naturally, she didn't want to admit she had just been distracted. Eunuch Louis, hearing this, glanced at Luna Clare, who still appeared disheveled and hadn't yet composed herself. His eyes flashed with understanding before he turned to look at Arthur Clare and the others with a meaningful gaze, causing their expressions to become somewhat unnatural. Lady Clare, His Majesty understands the hardships you've endured these past few days. He has granted you permission to enter the palace tomorrow to express your gratitude. Do you understand? Yes, I understand. Luna Claire obediently nodded, inwardly sighing. The rules of ancient times are so complicated. Eunuch Louis left, satisfied. After receiving generous rewards, Arthur Clare naturally refrained from making things difficult for Luna Claire anymore. Leaving behind the words, "Handle it yourself," Arthur Clare departed, taking Eleanor Clare and Vivian Clare with him. As for Willow Clare, the moment Arthur Clare left, she could no longer contain her excitement and rushed toward the rewards carefully held by the maids of the general's residence. However, before she could even touch them, a blur flashed before her eyes, and the trays of jewelry were swept away by a red silk cloth, so swiftly that she had no time to react. "What's this? Does my dear sister want them?" Luna Claire, holding the bundle of jewelry now wrapped tightly, smirked mockingly. These items were hers. There was no way she'd let this White Lotus dream of taking them. Willow Claire felt a bit embarrassed, managing only an awkward smile to cover up her intentions. "How could I? I just wanted to take a closer look." "Good, I was starting to think you were coveting what isn't yours." Luna Claire cut her off without waiting for her to finish, tossing out the remark before turning on her heel, carrying the small cloth bag, and walking away. Willow Claire stood frozen in place, watching Luna Claire's figure fade into the distance, her gaze filled with resentment. Chapter 14. The source of the trouble. The atmosphere in the Chancellor's study was heavy with tension. Arthur Clare furrowed his brows, remaining silent for a long time. Eleanor Clare and Vivian Clare stood quietly to the side, their expressions clearly uneasy. Finally, Eleanor Clare could no longer hold back. She stepped forward and gently asked, "My lord, is there any resolution to this matter yet?" Eleanor Clare was only 32 this year, and time had not left any trace on her face. Instead, it had made her even more graceful and charming. Normally, when Arthur Clare looked at Eleanor Clare, his gaze was always filled with affection. But today, he had no such mood. Hearing her question, his brows furrowed even deeper. After a long pause, he spoke in a deep voice. "I wonder, from the very beginning, did we choose the wrong path?" Eleanor Clare's heart skipped a beat upon hearing this. She quickly glanced at Vivian Clare before regaining her composure. "What do you mean, my lord?" she asked, pretending not to understand while clutching her handkerchief tightly. Arthur Clare did not answer Eleanor Clare, but instead turned his gaze toward Vivian Clare. Seeing this, Vivian Clare's face turned pale, but she obediently stepped forward and called out, "Father!" "Vivian Clare, His Majesty once expressed the intention to make you Empress." "Father, I have given my heart to Duke Darius. I beg you to grant your daughter's wish." Vivian Clare interrupted before Arthur Clare could finish, kneeling down with tears brimming in her eyes, her attitude firm. "This is not a decision you can make on your own. Today, His Majesty issued a warning. If he decides to settle accounts later, the entire Clare family will suffer." Arthur Clare's face was full of anger, his disappointment evident, as he was cut off by Vivian Clare. He had always doted on this daughter, but seeing her disregard the bigger picture left him undeniably disheartened. Eleanor Clare, noticing Arthur Clare's reaction, felt a pang of anxiety and quickly tried to console him. "My lord, Vivian Clare didn't mean to go against your wishes. Besides, Vivian Clare has always been strong-willed. Why not listen to what she has to say?" Truthfully, Eleanor Clare herself was unsure about today's events. However, as a mother with only one daughter, she couldn't bear to see her child in pain. Moreover, how could she let her daughter leave a bad impression in her father's eyes? Hearing Eleanor Clare's words, Arthur Clare's anger slightly subsided. He turned his gaze toward Vivian Clare. "Father, everyone knows that in the entire Phoenixwood Kingdom, the most powerful person is Duke Darius. Even the Emperor cannot compare. If your daughter were to marry the Emperor and become the Empress, it would be said to be a position of unparalleled honor. But in the end, you would still be beneath the two of them. Vivian Clare paused here, noticing that Arthur Clare did not refute her words, and then continued. Moreover, if Duke Darius has intentions. This time, before Vivian Clare could finish her sentence, Arthur Clare interrupted her. What should be said, and what should not be said, Arthur Clare naturally understood well. Vivian Clare's words had certainly been considered by him. Otherwise, he wouldn't have rejected the Emperor's marriage proposal earlier, nor would there have been the matter of the subsequent imperial decree. The room was so silent that even the sound of a pin dropping could be heard. After a long while, Arthur Clare sighed deeply, and then looked sternly at Vivian Clare. Vivian Clare, I can only give you one more chance. If not, our entire Prime Minister's manor will have to pay the price. Do you understand? Hearing this, Vivian Clare clenched her fists tightly, her eyes filled with unwillingness, but she obediently nodded. Luna Clare had no idea what secret conversation had taken place in the study. At this moment, she had returned to her small courtyard, following the original owner's memories. Looking at the scene before her, even though she had mentally prepared herself, Luna Clare couldn't help but feel at a loss for words. This was too impoverished. Chapter 15. A new perspective. The small courtyard where Luna Clare resided was located in the most secluded corner of the western side of Clare Manor. The courtyard was desolate and barren, and amidst the late spring season when flowers were in full bloom, not even a single wildflower could be seen here. The furnishings inside the room were even simpler, to the point of being overly simplistic. A table, 3 chairs, a bed, a wardrobe, and an old dressing table, nothing else. To think that the legitimate daughter of Clare Manor had to live in such conditions, it was truly difficult to understand who had arranged this place for her. Casually tossing the bundle she carried onto the table, Luna Clare finally sat down after an exhausting morning. Just as she was about to ponder her next steps, there was a sound at the door. A maid with delicate features, dressed in light blue, entered the room. This person, Luna Clare happened to recognize. Lily, the only maid who had stayed by the original owner's side after she returned to the manor. Lily, who had always resided in Willow Clare's courtyard, had never shown the original host a pleasant demeanor since her arrival. Not only did she disregard the original host entirely, but she also acted insubordinately and arrogantly. Aside from the original host's clothing, other items such as jewelry inevitably ended up in Lily's possession. Even the hairpin Lily was wearing at that moment had originally been a gift from Vivian Clare to the original host in front of Chancellor Clare when she first arrived at the manor. Luna Clare sat silently, observing Lily's disgruntled expression. She resolved to live well in Clare Manor on behalf of the original host, starting with disciplining this maid. If not, keeping such an insolent person by her side would only be self-torment. From the moment Lily entered, her gaze never once landed on Luna Clare. When she noticed the jewelry that had spilled out of the bundle on the table, the displeasure on her face was instantly replaced by greed. Her demeanor was identical to that of her mistress, Willow Clare. Seeing this, Luna Clare couldn't help but shake her head inwardly. The next scene unfolded exactly as Luna Clare had anticipated. Lily immediately reached out to grab the hairpin on the table. Her mannerisms were utterly unsightly, as if the items on the table were hers to begin with. Just as Lily thought she was about to succeed, a hand pressed down on hers, immobilizing her. "You?" Lily was interrupted, lifting her head in annoyance. But when her gaze met Luna Clare's cold eyes, the words she was about to say were stuck in her throat. "What about me?" Luna Clare looked at Lily with a faint smile, her gaze growing even colder. For some reason, seeing Luna Clare like this stirred a vague sense of fear within Lily. Was this truly the same country bumpkin as before? But that bumpkin had always been easy to bully. When had she developed such a chilling gaze? Summoning her courage, Lily assessed Luna Clare once more. Just yesterday, Lily herself had applied makeup for this so-called country bumpkin. Though today's makeup appeared even worse than yesterday's, she had seen this face enough times to be certain there was no mistake. With that thought, Lily clearly felt relieved, her gaze toward Luna Claire regaining some confidence and disdain. "Miss, this servant heard that you've acquired a few things. Worried that you might not take care of them properly, I thought I'd hold on to them for you. Please let go." Her tone was full of contempt, so much so that an outsider might mistake Luna Claire for the servant and Lily for the rightful young lady. "Hold on to them for me, so you can use them as you please?" Luna Claire's voice was icy. Did she think being indulged by the original host for a few days gave her the right to act so brazenly? Hearing Luna Claire say that, Lily not only didn't feel ashamed but even acted as if it was only natural. "Anyway, the lady is ugly, keeping these things is useless, so what if I take them?" As she spoke, she raised her hand intending to snatch them, her arrogant demeanor once again leaving Luna Claire astonished. Chapter 16. You are not the lady, who are you? Slap! A crisp sound echoed, and the room instantly fell silent. Lily held her face, her expression filled with disbelief as she stared at Luna Claire, unable to speak for a long moment. "Oh, got beaten by a country bumpkin? You dare hit me? I'll fight you to the death." Lily finally regained her senses and ferociously charged at Luna Claire with a fierce expression, as if ready to risk it all. Bang! With a single kick, Lily was sent sprawling to the ground, unable to get up immediately. The fall seemed to bring Lily back to her senses a bit. When her eyes met Luna Claire's icy gaze, her heart pounded wildly, and a wave of fear spread through her body. You're not the young lady. Who are you?" This person definitely wasn't that country bumpkin. That girl could never have such a terrifying look in her eyes. "I'm not." "Then are you?" Though the soul had changed, who would know that? Hearing this, Lily tried to speak, but as soon as she looked into Luna Claire's eyes, her whole body trembled again. Terrifying. But thinking about the person behind her, Lily gritted her teeth and got up. She was unwilling to accept this. Clearly, she could have lived a better life. Why must she serve this countryside girl? She had thought that once this rural girl left, she could return to serving the young lady. Who would have expected her to come back? It was this girl who caused her to end up in this wretched place. This girl who made her the laughingstock of her former sisters. It was all her fault. The unwillingness in Lily's eyes caught Luna Claire's attention, making her gaze grow even colder. What was she unwilling about? Did Luna not already know? This maid was clearly foolish, unable to grasp reality even now. "You want to return to your former master's side, but have you forgotten that your servitude contract is still in my hands?" Luna Claire remarked calmly as she sat down, her voice soft. Suddenly, her eyes turned icy. "Even if I were to sell or kill you, your former master wouldn't plead for you in the slightest. Do you believe me or not?" Her voice, cold and emotionless, struck Lily so deeply that she lost all spirit. It was as if, at that moment, Lily finally remembered that her servitude contract was in the hands of the very countryside girl she had always looked down upon. Their fates were now intertwined. Thinking of this, Lily's face turned pale. With a thud, Lily dropped to her knees, kowtowing repeatedly before Luna Claire. As she kowtowed, she pleaded, "Miss, please spare me. I won't dare again." Seeing that Lily was genuinely terrified, Luna Claire decided not to pursue the matter further. Right now, she was short on people. As long as she made her point clear to Lily, it was enough. Though she didn't trust her, if Lily knew her place, Luna would consider keeping her. If not, she wouldn't hesitate to deal with her mercilessly. With that thought, Luna Claire waved her hand, instructing Lily to prepare hot water and food. Last night, she soaked in cold water all night long. When she woke up, though her clothes were dry, her whole body felt uncomfortable, so she decided to freshen up quickly. While waiting for Lily, Luna Claire walked over to the dressing table. Upon seeing her disheveled face in the mirror, she nearly fell off the chair. Good heavens! Was that garish face, with features almost unrecognizable, really hers? No wonder she had been receiving disdainful looks since waking up. Forget others, even Luna herself could only mock her own appearance when confronted with this reflection. As she thought about it, the handsome face of the man from last night suddenly flashed in her mind, making her even more disheartened. Oh no! How could she have dared to parade this face in front of such a stunning man? She'd rather be struck by lightning than endure this humiliation. Chapter 17. Are you trying to infuriate me? What woman doesn't love to look beautiful? Luna Claire was no exception. So, after bathing and grooming herself, the first thing she did was look in the mirror, hoping to see a face that wouldn't disappoint. After all, based on the usual tropes of palace intrigue novels, only a heroine with stunning beauty would have her looks deliberately marred with garish makeup by villains. However, upon clearly seeing her reflection, Luna Claire realized she had been overthinking. While her features were passable, what was with all those patches of dark spots? Was this some sort of joke? Digging through the original owner's memories, Luna's gaze fell on the boxes of makeup on the dressing table. Her lips curled into a mocking smile. Such petty tricks, and they dared to pull them in front of me, the ghost doctor? It seemed she needed to return the favor to whoever was trying to ruin her appearance. As that thought crossed her mind, a sharp glint flashed in Luna Claire's eyes. Someone was about to have bad luck. Of course, you can't make bricks without straw. Luna Claire currently had nothing in hand, so this payback plan would have to be postponed. For the rest of the day, Luna Claire lived rather peacefully. In the blink of an eye, it was the next day, the day she was to enter the palace to express her gratitude. Early in the morning, the Prime Minister's wife, Eleanor Claire, sent over new clothes and makeup, showing some concern for appearances. However, when the room was left with only Luna Claire and her maid, the atmosphere suddenly became eerily quiet. Lily stood beside her, her face filled with nervous apprehension. "Miss, shall I help you with your makeup?" After yesterday's events, Lily was completely terrified of Luna Claire. Luna Claire did not respond. She simply stared silently at Lily, making the latter jump in fright. Without saying a word, Lily immediately knelt down. "Miss!" Lily's face was tense. "Luna Claire, am I really that scary?" "Don't be so nervous," Luna Claire said as she picked up the powder box on the table. What do you know about it?" With just a glance, she could tell that today's powder box was problematic as well. She was merely curious about what role Lily played in this matter. Lily hesitated but didn't dare to hide anything anymore. "I don't know either. I was ordered by the third miss to apply unattractive makeup for you, but why your face ended up like this, I truly don't know. It really wasn't me." As she finished speaking, Lily hurriedly explained. After discovering the black spots appearing on the miss's face, she had been frightened. Later, she used thicker powder to cover them up, which earned her quite a reward from the 3rd Mississippi. "Does anyone else know about this?" Luna Claire asked again. "Only I know. Even the 3rd Miss doesn't know," Lily quickly replied. Hearing this, Luna Claire understood and decided not to pursue the matter further. "All right, get up and do my makeup," Luna Claire said calmly, turning toward the dressing table. Lily was stunned for a moment, but eventually stood up. However, when she saw the powder box, she still hesitated. She remembered clearly that it was after using this powder box that the Miss's appearance started deteriorating. But now? "Just use this one," Luna Claire said nonchalantly, fully aware of Lily's concerns. After all, it didn't make much of a difference. But Lily wanted to say something, but under Luna Claire's gaze, she changed her tone. "What kind of makeup would you like, miss?" Although the black spots were unsightly, with some white powder to cover them, it wasn't impossible to create an attractive look. "Just make me look as unattractive as before," Luna Claire said indifferently. After all, everyone already thought she was ugly, and she truly wasn't beautiful now. It was less troublesome to maintain her previous appearance. Chapter 18. Your Majesty, are you out of your mind? After Lily had finished applying the makeup, Luna Claire left Claire Manor under Lily's worried gaze. She boarded the carriage prepared by the Manor, and headed straight for the palace. In just about the time it took to burn 2 sticks of incense, the carriage arrived at the palace gates. As she alighted, a young eunuch was already waiting to guide her. Along the way, Luna Claire was not idle. She admired the intricate architecture of the royal palace. Honestly, it was her first time visiting the royal palace. If she didn't take the time to fully enjoy the sights, she'd feel guilty toward herself. The palace was truly vast, with red walls and green tiles reminiscent of the old palace. However, unlike the old palace's ancient and somber aura, this one exuded majesty and vibrant energy. The imperial garden was even more dazzling, with hundreds of blooming flowers showing off their beauty, unlike the imperial garden in the old palace, which only had a few pine trees planted in a small corner. While taking in the scenery and making comparisons, Luna Claire found herself unknowingly led to a palace. Eunuch Louis noticed her arrival, glanced briefly at her makeup, furrowed his brows slightly, and then said calmly, "His Majesty is waiting inside. Please go in." Hearing this, Luna Claire gave Eunuch Louis a slight nod before stepping inside. As soon as she entered the grand hall, she saw Emperor Augustus Knight seated on the golden throne, draped in a bright yellow imperial robe. At first, she had assumed Emperor Augustus Knight would be a middle-aged man, but to her surprise, he was a young man of about 17 or 18. However, recalling that Duke Consort Marcus Knight was Augustus Knight's elder brother, she wasn't too shocked. After all, Marcus Knight was only in his early 20s. It had to be said, Emperor Augustus Knight, as a ruler, naturally had striking features, sharp eyebrows and starry eyes, radiating a regal demeanor. Yet, none of it stirred her heart in the slightest. Moreover, from the moment she entered, Augustus Knight's gaze had been fixed on her face, unrestrained and filled with undisguised disdain. Strangely enough, within that disdain, Luna Claire could also detect a hint of smug satisfaction. This puzzled Luna Claire greatly, leaving her with an uncomfortable feeling, as though the emperor before her was plotting something against her. "Your subject greets your majesty." Pushing aside her chaotic thoughts, Luna Claire curtsied, deliberately raising her voice to snap the young emperor on the throne out of his daze. After all, being stared at with such a loathsome and calculating look would make anyone uncomfortable. You are the eldest daughter of the Claire estate, Luna Claire?" Augustus Knight did not rebuke her for not kneeling. Instead, he asked this question. After all, compared to what he was currently thinking, formalities like these were insignificant. "Yes," Luna Claire calmly nodded, without adding anything further. "Good, very good." Augustus Knight seemed in high spirits, his face full of smiles. "Luna Claire, your Majesty, is there something wrong with your mind?" What exactly about her being Luna Claire was making him so pleased? Countless thoughts swirled in Luna Claire's mind, yet her face remained expressionless as she stood silently in place. "This matter, I understand now. I know you've suffered grievances, but rest assured, I will find you a good match," Augustus Knight said, appearing quite interested. "Thank you, your Majesty." Luna Claire thanked him indifferently, but inwardly, she had already begun silently complaining. Feeling reassured? He said so, but how could she possibly feel reassured? She didn't even care for him to help her find some perfect match. This emperor must surely be bored out of his mind to come up with such things. Seeing her reaction, Augustus Knight seemed to have achieved his goal. Without saying another word, he waved his hand dismissively. "All right, I'm busy. You may leave now." Luna Claire. "Yes." Busy? If he's so busy, why is he concerning himself with her love life? Shouldn't he be more focused on state affairs? Moreover, why did she feel as though the emperor summoned her to the palace just to tell her he'd find her a suitable match? Was she overthinking it? There were countless women in the capital. Why would the emperor care about the love life of an unattractive woman like her? Luna Claire left the grand hall with a head full of doubts, yet the strange feeling in her heart only grew stronger. Chapter 19. The handsome Duke Darius? Leaving the palace wasn't as straightforward as entering it. Without someone to guide her, and with her mind weighed down by thoughts, Luna Claire ended up straying off the path. Unbeknownst to her, a luxurious carriage was slowly approaching. The man inside, upon catching sight of her face, suddenly narrowed his eyes, a cold aura emanating from his presence. "How dare you! Blocking the path of Duke Darius's carriage! Are you tired of living?" A sharp, arrogant voice rang out, jolting Luna Claire back to reality. She lifted her head, her gaze sweeping past the furious eunuch and landing directly on the man inside the carriage. In that moment, she froze. The man, dressed in a purple dragon robe, had a face so stunningly beautiful it was beyond description. Every feature seemed meticulously carved by the heavens, flawless in every way. But it was his violet eyes that stood out the most, mesmerizingly beautiful, drawing one in as if to drown them. Wait a minute. Purple eyes? Something feels off here. Could it really be such a coincidence? Luna Claire felt a chill run down her spine, her entire body frozen stiff. She slowly looked back at the handsome man's face, her gaze meeting those cold, purple eyes. Instantly, an icy aura enveloped her. Chapter 19. The handsome man is Duke Darius? Good heavens, is this world really so small? It's the handsome man from that night. In the past, she was naive and clueless, but now she was much more aware. Though she was a self-proclaimed beauty enthusiast and wanted to indulge in the breathtaking appearance of the man before her, she could clearly sense the dangerous aura emanating from him. A man like this was absolutely not someone to mess with, otherwise, even her bones might not remain intact. Realizing this, Luna Claire felt even more uneasy. Oh heavens! How unfair can life be? On her very first day in this new world, she encountered a handsome man, only for him to be an extremely difficult character to deal with. Was this fate's way of sending her to an early grave? After a whirlwind of panic, a spark of clarity suddenly flashed in Luna Claire's mind, and she regained her composure. Though she had almost done something reckless to the man before her the night before, in the end, she hadn't actually done anything right. Moreover, she had even saved his life, hadn't she? Surely he wouldn't repay kindness with cruelty, would he? At this moment, Luna Claire's mind instinctively filtered out the scene of her teasing the handsome man. Deep down, she absolutely refused to admit that her behavior had been both annoying and deserving of a beating. Every subtle change on Luna Claire's face was caught by Darius Knight, whose purple eyes narrowed slightly. The dangerous glint in his gaze grew even more intense, causing those around him to tremble in fear. It must be noted that the man sitting in the palanquin was the most powerful figure in the Phoenixwood Kingdom. A mere stomp from him could shake the entire nation 3 times over. The wrath of Duke Darius was not something anyone could bear. Meaning Duke Darius without paying respects is a crime punishable by death. The eunuch who had earlier scolded Luna Claire assumed Duke Darius's anger was due to her lack of courtesy. Emboldened yet trembling, he raised his voice again, though this time with a hint of fear. Hearing this, Luna Claire blinked, her expression utterly dumbfounded. Duke Darius? The handsome man? The handsome man is Duke Darius. Someone even more terrifying than the Emperor. Oh no! Luna Claire felt like her life was over. Chapter 20. A truly provocative act. Luna Claire sighed inwardly, her heart racing like 1,000 galloping horses. She never imagined she would provoke the most powerful man in the country. Yet, thinking about how this powerful man was also a doomed soul, Luna Claire couldn't help but feel, indeed, the heavens are fair. They granted him beauty and power, only to strip him of his longevity. No wonder he seemed more reliable than that young emperor, but still, he was just a Duke Darius. Perhaps the late emperor feared he wouldn't live long enough. Luna Claire fell into a daze once again, causing Darius Knight's gaze to grow even more profound. He waved his hand, signaling for everyone to leave. Soon, only the two of them remained in the imperial garden. Luna Claire snapped out of her thoughts the moment Darius Knight dismissed everyone. She wanted to tell them not to leave, but hesitated under his cold stare. Fine, she had to admit, under the overwhelming aura of this man, she felt a bit intimidated. However, her fear couldn't entirely mask her inherent weakness for handsome men. When Darius Knight stepped down from his carriage, Luna Claire's eyes were once again drawn to his striking appearance. "Woman, you're quite bold." Darius Knight spoke coldly, his tone carrying a hint of gritted teeth. He had encountered plenty of shameless women before, but none as brazen as her. On the brink of death, and yet she dared to look at him with such a disgusting gaze. How detestable. Luna Claire. What should I do? This is so embarrassing. The next time she admired a handsome man, she absolutely had to do it discreetly, never so blatantly again. Oh my, this habit of swooning over handsome men is truly ruining her image beyond repair. She felt frustrated about it too, you know. Duke Darius, what a coincidence. Luna Claire greeted awkwardly, her eyes darting around, secretly searching for an escape route. Duke Darius? Darius Knight frowned. What kind of ridiculous address was that? Have you forgotten something? Darius Knight decided not to beat around the bush with the unattractive woman before him, and got straight to the point. He had no time to waste lingering here. Of course not. Luna Claire blinked innocently. She was actually hoping he would forget everything that happened. Wasn't Duke Darius supposed to be incredibly busy? Why would he even remember such a trivial matter from the other night? Oh! Darius Knight's eyes glinted dangerously as he suddenly leaned closer to Luna Claire, his entire demeanor exuding a seductive aura. Should I help you remember? Faced with his unexpectedly close, handsome face, Luna Claire's heart skipped a beat, but she tried her best to respond. Well, you didn't lose anything, so why bother holding a grudge? Holding a grudge? Darius Knight almost laughed. Then, without warning, he raised his hand, causing Luna Claire to step back in alarm, her face wary as she stared at him, fearing he might strike her. If Duke Darius truly made a move, should she fight back or not? This dilemma was giving her quite a headache. After all, in this era, laying hands on Duke Darius didn't seem like a minor offense. Do you think I suffered no loss? Darius Knight spoke as his hand lightly touched his lips. Following his gaze, Luna Claire noticed a faint scar on his otherwise perfect lips. Oh no, she had bitten him. It was only then that Luna Claire realized Darius Knight hadn't raised his hand to hit her. But, staring at Darius Knight's lips, Luna Claire couldn't help but gulp. Gosh, a handsome man caressing his lips could really kill someone with charm. Her blatant reaction was impossible for Darius Knight to ignore. Instantly, his previously seductive expression turned dark, and the veins on his forehead twitched. You truly have no shame. This woman, did she always put on such a disgusting display whenever she saw a good-looking man? For some reason, the thought made him extremely irritable. Chapter 21. Nosebleed Again. Hearing that, Luna Claire immediately withdrew her infatuated expression and squinted her eyes at Darius Knight. Shameless? She had tricks that were even beyond shameless. Thinking so, the corners of Luna Claire's lips curled up slightly as she reverted to her usual rogue demeanor. She looked at Darius Knight and said, "You're so beautiful, aren't you just made for people to admire?" As expected, upon hearing this, Darius Knight's face darkened completely. This damn woman, she must have a death wish. How dare she use the disgusting word beautiful to describe him? She should know that the last person who dared to say that in front of him now has grass growing 3 feet high over their grave. A dangerous aura surrounded Luna Claire, and she could clearly feel the suffocating pain pressing against her internal organs. Damn it! Was this the legendary internal energy suppression? It was clearly bullying her, a modern person who knew nothing about internal energy. How hateful! Swallowing the metallic taste rising in her throat, Luna Claire grinned widely and continued to provoke. "Last time, I only touched you once. At most, you can touch me back." With that, Luna Claire fixed her mischievous gaze on Darius Knight's chest. Thinking back to the sensation from last time, TSK, it was truly wonderful. If she could touch him again, how great would that be? This man was clearly not someone easy to mess with, so managing to touch him once was already a great deal. As she thought about it, Luna Claire grew even more expectant. However, at that very moment, her body suddenly froze. Her eyes were betraying her again. She could actually see through the man's clothes, clearly taking in every inch of his skin. Look at that seductive collarbone, that firm chest, those 8-pack abs, and even gulp. The sight was truly quite a feast for the eyes. However, this isn't the main point. The main point is, why did her eyes change color again? Could it be that from now on, she has to face a world in color? Even though she's a doctor and has seen plenty of men, if everyone looks like this, it's truly an eyesore. After all, not everyone has a body as perfect as a handsome man's, right? Thinking this, Luna Claire felt incredibly conflicted inside, yet she still glanced at Darius Knight once more. Still the same image of him without a shred of clothing. Oh heavens! She couldn't take it anymore. A warm stream of blood trickled from her nose. Luna Claire reached up to touch it, and in an instant, it was like thunder striking her ears. She was having a nosebleed again. Darius Knight felt like he was about to be driven mad today. Being stared at obsessively by an ugly woman was already bad enough, but this ugly woman didn't even have the slightest restraint. Her gaze grew more and more disgusting, and she even dared to have a nosebleed right in front of him. For some reason, under the revolting gaze of this ugly woman, he felt as if he were completely naked. This feeling made him extremely uncomfortable, and the consequences of his anger were extremely severe. It seemed that it had been too long since he had shed blood, causing people to mistakenly think he was just a paper tiger. Otherwise, how could this woman dare to act so brazenly in front of him? With that thought, Darius Knight's hand swiftly reached toward Luna Claire. "Dupe, Darius!" Just as Darius Knight's hand was about to touch Luna Claire's neck, a eunuch's voice called out from afar. This was her moment. In an instant, Luna Claire's infatuated gaze turned cold and sharp. Then, with lightning speed, she turned around and bolted in the direction she had planned beforehand. What a joke! She wasn't truly stupid. Putting on that disgusting expression was all part of her plan to provoke this man in front of her, wasn't it? One must know, an enraged person is much more likely to reveal a flaw, and she could only seize this opportunity to slip away unnoticed. Of course, with the assistance of that eunuch, her escape became even easier. Darius Knight watched as Luna Claire fled from him at an incredible speed. The fury in his eyes gradually dissipated, replaced by a deep, unfathomable look in his enchanting purple eyes. This woman, there seemed to be something unusual about her. Chapter 22. Your Majesty should establish an empress already. In the imperial study room, Darius Knight had just taken his seat when a eunuch presented tea. After the eunuch withdrew, Augustus Knight engaged in small talk with Darius Knight for a while. However, it was evident that Darius Knight wasn't particularly interested. "If your Majesty has something to say, just say it directly." The cold, emotionless voice caused the friendly expression on Augustus Knight's face to stiffen. Suppressing the discomfort in his eyes, Augustus Knight forced a smile and spoke cautiously. "Third brother, you're not young anymore. Shouldn't you consider marriage?" His cautious tone revealed just how wary Emperor Augustus Knight was of Darius Knight. However, after Augustus Knight finished speaking, Darius Knight remained silent for a long time. It was as if he were the only one in the imperial study room, leaving Augustus feeling both awkward and embarrassed. When Augustus finally looked up, he met those cold, deep purple eyes, as chilling as a still pond. "No rush," Darius Knight replied softly, his emotionless purple eyes glancing briefly at Augustus Knight. "Perhaps your Majesty should consider establishing an empress instead." Under Darius Knight's gaze, the discomfort in Augustus Knight's heart was quickly replaced by fear and guilt. Hearing Darius Knight's suggestion, he was momentarily at a loss for words, and could only force an awkward smile. His demeanor lacked any imperial majesty, while Darius Knight exuded an air of nobility from beginning to end, as though he stood above all others. Chapter 22. Your Majesty should establish an empress already. Darius Knight glanced at Augustus Knight before standing up. "Your Majesty should devote yourself to the matters of the state." This statement seemed to carry profound implications, as though he had seen through Augustus Knight's petty schemes. After speaking, Darius Knight didn't bother to observe Augustus Knight's reaction, and turned to leave the imperial study room. Augustus Knight could only watch his retreating figure without daring to utter a word. It wasn't until Darius Knight's silhouette completely disappeared that Augustus Knight grabbed a memorial nearby and threw it to the ground, his eyes filled with resentment and unwillingness. When Darius Knight returned to his carriage, a shadowy figure silently appeared beside him. "Master, it has been confirmed that His Majesty has had contact with that person," the shadow respectfully reported. Hearing that, the corners of Darius Knight's lips curled into a cold, mocking smile. He said nothing, but the aura around him grew oppressively heavy and terrifying. "Go!" On the other side, when Luna Claire arrived at the palace gates, the carriage from Clare Manor had long since departed. She wasn't surprised, nor did she feel bothered. After all, she hadn't planned to return immediately when she went out today. She hadn't forgotten about taking revenge on the one who had disfigured her. Now that she was out, how could she not be fully prepared? And the first step was to make money. Currently, the most valuable things she had were the pieces of jewelry bestowed upon her by the emperor the day before. To convert them into money, the most urgent task was to find a pawnshop. Fortunately, pawnshops weren't scarce in this era. After asking around a bit, Luna Claire quickly found one. Seeing a customer, the shop assistant hurriedly came out to greet her. But upon seeing Luna Claire's face, he froze in shock. "Call your manager out here," Luna Claire said calmly, as if she hadn't noticed the frightened look on the shop assistant's face. The items she carried weren't something a mere shop assistant could handle. After all, these were treasures from the palace, worth an extraordinary amount. Just as the shop assistant was about to respond, the middle-aged manager, who appeared to be in his 50s, stepped out from the back with a smile that crinkled his eyes. "Miss, do you have any valuable items you wish to pawn?" Judging from her attire, she seemed to come from a wealthy background. Whatever someone like her brought in surely wouldn't be ordinary. Luna Claire gave the manager a once-over and nodded. I have fine items, but it depends on whether you dare to accept them or not. Chapter 23. Another handsome man, Luna Claire, said so because the item she was holding was a reward from the emperor, not some ordinary piece of jewelry. In truth, she wasn't entirely sure if it could be pawned or not. Therefore, she didn't place all her hopes on this. If it didn't work out, as a renowned ghost doctor, how could she possibly fail to find a wealthy, no, a patient? The shopkeeper's eyes lit up upon hearing her words. Excellent. When a customer speaks like this, it's almost certain they have a treasure. As for the origin of the treasure, that wasn't the pawnshop's concern. They were only responsible for appraising and reselling it. You must be joking, miss. Our pawnshop has been here for years. There's no item too good for us to handle. In this overcrowded capital city, who didn't have some sort of backing? Luna Claire remained calm, pulling out from her sleeve a premium quality jade pendant, one of the items she had been rewarded with just the day before. This jade pendant was indeed a treasure, made from rare warm jade that emitted a gentle warmth upon touch, with intricate carvings that were exceptionally exquisite. The shopkeeper's eyes sparkled when he saw the jade pendant, and his smile made his wrinkled face resemble a blooming chrysanthemum. However, just as he was about to appraise it, his gaze fell on a mark engraved on the jade pendant. His expression immediately changed, and he nearly dropped the pendant in shock. Is this an imperial reward from the emperor? Clearly, the shopkeeper was greatly startled. Seeing this, Luna Claire understood it seemed this deal wouldn't go through. As expected, after seeing Luna Claire nod, the shopkeeper bluntly refused, showing no remorse for his earlier boasts. Are you kidding me? They might accept items of unknown origin, but how could they dare accept something bestowed by the emperor? Naturally, someone capable of holding an imperial gift must not be an ordinary person. He dared not offend her, and politely said that if Luna Claire had other valuable items, his shop would surely accept them. Then, with courtesy, he saw her out. Luna Claire did not insist, and tried 2 more shops, but the outcome remained the same, leaving her feeling disheartened. If the young lady has something difficult to pawn, why not try Wanderer's Tower? Just as Luna Claire was about to give up on pawning her belongings, a gentle voice spoke from behind. Luna Claire looked around and saw no one else nearby, so she turned back. She wouldn't have been startled if she hadn't looked, but once she did, she was taken aback. It was yet another handsome man. Could it be that the ancient era only produced beautiful men? The man standing before Luna Claire was dressed in white. Though his features weren't as refined as Duke Darius's, he was still a rare gentleman with a calm and gentle air, making one immediately think of the phrase, a nobleman like jade, unparalleled in the world. However, Luna Claire was only momentarily surprised, and did not fall into a daze, as she had when looking at Darius Knight. Moreover, she could clearly sense that beneath the gentle and jade-like exterior of the man before her lay an icy heart. That coldness was well hidden in the depths of his eyes, making it hard for others to detect. Such a person was like poison. Associating with him, one wouldn't know when they might fall victim. Are you speaking to me, sir? Luna Claire asked, a bit uncertain. She was just a passerby, with an extremely unattractive appearance. Could someone like him really be initiating a conversation with her? To be honest, even she found it hard to believe. Chapter 24. Tristan Bell. Besides you, is there anyone else here? Tristan Bell chuckled and asked in return. Rowan Wood stood beside him, initially ignored by Luna Claire, and then treated as invisible by his master. Fair enough. Luna Claire nodded and then inquired. May I know what Wanderer's Tower is, as you mentioned? The original owner of this body had never left the capital since returning, so it was natural that she had no knowledge of the Wanderer's Tower the young man in front of her referred to. Wanderer's Tower is the largest auction house in the Great Azure. It also has a pawn shop that accepts items others wouldn't dare to. Tristan Bell explained before adding, "Of course, Wanderer's Tower also handles certain other matters." Although Tristan Bell's emphasis on other matters seemed to carry a hidden implication, it wasn't something Luna Claire cared about. Instead, she simply asked for directions to Wanderer's Tower. She was somewhat intrigued by Wanderer's Tower, a place renowned as the largest auction house in the Great Azure. What does an auction house have? Naturally, rare and exotic treasures. Though she currently lacked the funds to buy anything, how could someone like her, the ghost doctor, possibly remain poor forever? Certainly not. So today, paying a visit to broaden her horizons seemed like a good idea. With that thought, Luna Claire clasped her hands in thanks to Tristan Bell and turned to leave. But just as she turned, something seemed to cross her mind. She abruptly turned back, her gaze scrutinizing Tristan Bell without any hint of politeness. Rowanwood, seeing this, was about to scold her, but was halted by a glance from Tristan Bell. Moments later, Luna Claire withdrew her gaze, her eyes appearing slightly disappointed. This left Tristan Bell puzzled, prompting him to glance at himself, wondering what about him could have caused such disappointment. As for Luna Claire, her behavior stemmed from her eyes losing control twice when she saw Darius Knight. Though she didn't want to perceive the world in unusual colors, the fact that her eyes changed color still lingered in her mind. After leaving the palace, she had experimented with ordinary people and found no issues. Just now, as she turned away, she thought, could it be that my eyes are naturally drawn to beauty and only change color when I see handsome men? Clearly, this hypothesis was incorrect, leaving her slightly disappointed. Could it be that her eyes only changed color when seeing Darius Knight? This thought left Luna Claire momentarily stunned. Shaking her head, Luna Claire dismissed the strange idea and turned to leave, leaving Tristan Bell and Rowanwood behind with confused expressions. "Master!" Rowanwood finally couldn't hold back and spoke up. His master had never been one to meddle in others' affairs, so why did he take the initiative to speak to this unattractive young woman today? Wasn't this the same unsightly lady from Clare Manor who caused such a commotion in the capital yesterday? Could it be that his master had developed a taste for this type? However, before Rowanwood could voice his doubts, Tristan Bell's indifferent gaze silenced him. At this moment, there was no trace of gentleness left on Tristan Bell's face. "I acknowledge my mistake." Seeing this, Rowanwood quickly knelt down to admit his fault. Tristan Bell did not pursue the matter further, but instead looked in the direction where Luna Claire's figure gradually disappeared, his eyes glinting with a mix of intrigue and indecipherable scrutiny. The Wanderer's Tower wasn't hard to find. Just follow the main road, and the tallest, largest building would be it. As soon as Luna Claire stepped into the Wanderer's Tower and took in its interior layout, she was immediately stunned. Oh my, was she seeing things? Chapter 25. Encountering the fat sheep. The moment Luna Claire entered the Wanderer's Tower, what greeted her eyes was gold spread everywhere. The entire floor and the pillars of the first-floor grand hall were made of gold, with the hall spanning at least 200 or 300 square meters. Wow, could ancient wealthy people really flaunt their riches like this? Luna Claire quietly swallowed her saliva, calculating in her heart the chances of success if she pried off 1 or 2 pieces of gold. However, she could only dare to think about it, and not actually do it. Are you kidding me? Flaunting wealth so blatantly right under the Emperor's nose and still standing tall. Could such a place be ordinary? Luna Claire felt a tinge of regret for not asking in detail what exactly the other business entailed. She wasn't naive enough to believe that the Wanderer's Tower earned its reverence merely by being the #1 auction guild in the Great Azure. Where did this country bumpkin come from? Seeing a bit of gold and already gawking like that? Just as Luna Claire was about to move on, a mocking voice came from the side. She intended to ignore it, but the voice chimed in again. "Oh my, and it's an ugly one at that. TSK. So hideous yet daring enough to step outside and offend others' eyes. Forgot to check a mirror before leaving, didn't you? Ha ha." The sharp words seemed to have garnered some agreement, as laughter rippled through the crowd. Being provoked so directly, Luna Claire could no longer turn a blind eye. She raised her cold gaze, and before her stood a spoiled young man clad in a deep blue robe trimmed with silver patterns, a jade-green silk belt tied around his waist. He looked decent enough, but his venomous mouth made her want to sew it shut. William Knight was laughing and chatting merrily with his group of friends, but the moment he met Luna Claire's icy stare, his smile froze, and a chill ran down his spine. He suddenly realized he had been startled by the gaze of a